But with that said, let's start with LSU. And we're going to start with LSU for a couple obvious reasons. Biggest job, most interest. I don't know if it's the best job. The USC versus LSU conversation has been going on for about 6, 7, 8 weeks now. It doesn't really matter. LSU is sexy. LSU is a big brand. LSU is a 100,000-seat stadium. LSU is a school where the last 3 coaches have won national championships. And LSU is the job that I think most people have the most interest in terms of which candidates they're going to get. And I do think over the last week or so, I think we've actually quietly gotten a lot of clarification on who could be a realistic candidate, who might not be, and what it all means in the bigger picture. But what I would start by saying with at LSU is, before we get to who might be interested and who might not be, there is a mega candidate that has emerged over the last 2 weeks or so in the LSU search. That candidate, Lincoln Riley, the head coach at Oklahoma. And this was something, and by the way, some people are going to say, Torres, oh my God, now you're talking Lincoln Riley. You're crazy. Okay, listen, I don't make up the headlines. I just react to them. And there have been, if you go on social media, if you go on Google, if you go on Twitter, if you go on YouTube, there is a lot of buzz that there may be genuine interest between both sides. And I will say on Tuesday, we sort of got the first semi-credible report from somebody in college football that this thing may be realistic. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Tom Luginbill at ESPN was doing an interview, and he was asked about the situation. Tom Luginbill is on the road every week at ESPN in these stadiums, talking to these coaching staffs, talking to assistant coaches, talking to players. This isn't a guy just throwing stuff out from left field. This is a guy that is credible. This is a guy that has a voice. This is a guy whose voice carries weight. And this is what he said about the whole situation between Lincoln Riley, a name that is quickly emerging as as a potential candidate at LSU. That's what Tom Luginbill said. He said, there's something going on at Oklahoma right now, and I would not be surprised one bit if the next LSU head coach is Lincoln Riley. So shout out to Tom Luginbill. Aaron Torres didn't say it. This isn't my speculation. My job is to react to the biggest stories in college football, and there is nothing bigger than somebody at ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports, somebody who is in these stadiums every single Saturday, saying he would not be surprised at all if Lincoln Riley is the next LSU head coach. Now, some of you are probably sitting there saying, but Torres, it makes no sense. I don't care what he said. What does an opinion matter? And I will say, to a degree, there's something to that, right? We always talk about the quote-unquote best jobs in college football and what does it mean and which job is better than this and which job is better than that. And while LSU is no doubt one of the best jobs in college football, maybe top 2 or 3, Oklahoma's not far behind. I don't know if they're number 7. I don't know if they're number 8. I don't know if they're number 11. But they are in the very short conversation. And it's not like he isn't having an insane amount of success at Oklahoma. Generally, when one guy leaves a good job for another, it's generally because he's either not happy or his boosters aren't happy or he's not winning. He's looking for an escape hatch. That is simply not the case with Lincoln Riley. I know he lost on Saturday, but the overall record for Lincoln Riley at Oklahoma is a stunning 54-9 in 4, almost 5 full seasons as a head coach. That includes 4 Big 12 titles in 4 seasons as the head coach. One of them he didn't win in the regular season, but he won the Big 12 title last year. 3 college football playoff appearances, and there is no doubt that he is one of the bright young coaches in college football. And if he wants to stay in if he wants to stay in Norman for about as long as he can, it doesn't really I don't want to say it doesn't make sense for him to leave, but there are a ton of good reasons for him to stay. And I should mention that on Tuesday, he even said as much, I'm not interested, blah, 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 blah. All of these guys say that. So the question now becomes, if he's dominating in Oklahoma, why would he ever consider leaving for the LSU job? And the more that I think about it, the more that I realize I think there are really 3 reasons that I believe that there is something to this rumor. Not saying it's going to happen, not saying Lincoln Riley is going to be the next head coach at LSU, but there are 3 reasons that I kind of believe that this could at least be in play. The first one, it's the Scott Woodward effect. And I've talked about it a ton on this show, and I don't really want to spend too much more time talking about it. But as I've told you a million times, Scott Woodward, LSU's AD, is the single most aggressive AD in college sports. By the way, this is not my opinion. It's essentially a fact. If you guys listen, you'd think I worked for Scott Woodward's PR firm. I don't at all. But the bottom line is this guy is a fearless AD. I've said it many times. He runs coaching searches the way that fans would if they were in charge. There is no name that is off limits. There is no guy that is too big. There is no salary that cannot be paid if it is the right candidate. And so you look at his track record, that's the first reason I believe Lincoln Riley is a candidate here. Because look at what he's done everywhere else. Nobody thought Jimbo Fisher was leaving Florida State for Texas A&M. Scott Woodward, who was the AD there, guess who he hired? Jimbo Fisher, when everyone said there was no way he was leaving Florida State. Before he gets to Texas A&M, you know where Scott Woodward was at? He was at the University of Washington. And for years, everybody assumed there's no way Chris Peterson ever leaves Boise State. Well, he goes to Washington. How about this past spring? Scott Woodward gets the AD job at LSU, I don't know, about a year and a half ago. He has a women's basketball coaching opening, and he goes and gets Kim Mulkey, 3-time national championship winning coach at Baylor. And so for anybody sitting out there saying, it's preposterous, why would Lincoln Riley ever leave? It makes no sense. Did it make sense for Jimbo Fisher to leave Florida State for Texas A&M? Well, he did. Was it preposterous to think that you could get Chris Peterson from Boise? It was, and Scott Woodward did. Was it crazy to think that Kim Mulkey was ever going to leave Baylor, where she is literally a living legend? It was, and Scott Woodward pulled it off anyway. I don't think getting Lincoln Riley from Oklahoma is ultimately all that much more surprising and shocking than any of the 3 big hires that Scott Woodward has already made. On top of that, what I would also say is something that I say often on this show. Whenever a rumor is out there for as long as this one is, it's out there for a reason. Somebody wants it, okay? There's a reason that Nick Saban isn't rumored as the next LSU head coach. It's because Nick Saban doesn't want the job, and Nick Saban is going to let anybody know that that's a stupid question for even asking. There's a reason Ryan Day isn't a candidate for the job. He doesn't want it. He's happy at Ohio State. If he's leaving Ohio State, it's probably to go to the NFL. So the fact that this Lincoln Riley thing has gone on 2, 3, 4 weeks, however it's long it's been since he was first listed as a potential candidate, there is a reason that it is out there, and it's because somebody, either Lincoln Riley himself or close to Lincoln Riley, wants it out there. Maybe it's Lincoln Riley. Maybe he's frustrated this season. Weird year, Spencer Rattler this, Caleb Williams that, can't quite figure it out. Maybe he wants it out there. Maybe his agent wants it out there. Maybe his agent's looking for a raise. Maybe his agent wants Oklahoma to pony up the dough. Maybe it's about respect. I don't know. But whether it is about respect, whether it is about just using this to get a raise from Oklahoma, whether it's to get some new thing, money for coaches, resources, facility, whatever it is, there's a reason that this rumor is still out there. And then finally, what I would say is, let's just look at it from a football perspective, because I think from a football perspective, it makes sense. Oklahoma, as I said, it's one of the 10 best jobs in college football. And it is certainly one of, at worst, either the first or second best job in the Big 12. But what we also have to recognize, the game has changed at Oklahoma. 6-8 months ago, I think Lincoln Riley would laugh if his name was even mentioned in a conversation for a job like LSU. Because why would you leave LSU? Why would you leave Oklahoma for LSU or anywhere? You have either the first or second best job in the Big 12. You have financial commitments that no one else outside of Texas in this conference has. You can pay the best for assistant coaches. You can recruit nationally. You can do things at Oklahoma that only Texas can do in the Big 12. And for whatever reason, Texas can't figure out how to do it right. But then everything changed in July. Everything changed in July when Oklahoma decided that they want to go to the SEC. Now, all of a sudden, you're not in a conference where there are 9 wins easy on the schedule that all you got to do is show up and don't screw up and you're going to win. That was what it was like in the Big 12. Just show up, don't mess this up, you're going to win, you're going to be fine. On top of that, what I would also say, beyond that, now you're going to the SEC where you're not the best job. You're not the second best job, but you're what? If we're talking about Oklahoma realistically, what is Oklahoma? 5th best job in the SEC? 6th best job? Tell you what, it's not better than LSU. It's not better than Georgia. It's not better than Florida. It's not better than Bama. I don't think it's better than A&M. You could argue it's better than A&M. I don't think it's better than A&M. It's not better than Texas, even though Texas can't figure it out. So what are we talking about here? The 5th best job? The 6th best job in a conference where it is no longer a guarantee that you're going to win 9 to 10 games and have a spot in a 14 playoff? Now you're fighting. Now it's a dogfight. Now you don't got Iowa State and Kansas State every Saturday when you show up to the stadium. Now instead of Iowa State and Kansas State, you got Auburn and Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin and LSU if you don't go and Florida. And you know when you get to the SEC, that conference, they're going to want a return on their investment bringing you in Texas in. They ain't giving you Vanderbilt to start. They're probably sending you to Georgia. They're probably sending you to Bama. They're probably sending you to Texas A&M. They are sending you somewhere where they could get a return on their investment. And so if you're Lincoln Riley and you're sitting there and saying, wait a second now, we might be in the SEC as early as next year. We have been trying to build a roster to compete with these SEC teams, but we get time to figure stuff out during the regular season. And by the way, when they've gotten to the postseason, it hasn't been pretty. 4 losses in the college football playoff for Oklahoma, 3 of them to SEC teams. Could have beaten Georgia, in their defense, could have beaten Georgia. Lost to Bama with Kyler Murray. Bama was the much better team for most of that game. They rallied late because they had Kyler Murray, who is apparently a transcendent player. We didn't even appreciate it at the time, how good he was, especially how he's doing in the NFL. I know he's banged up right now, but you get the point. And then 2 years ago, they played LSU and got destroyed. And so if Lincoln Riley's like, dude, I couldn't compete with LSU 2 years ago. I got to go somewhere where I can get me more players. And the thing with Lincoln Riley that you have to consider, there's a couple things. One, it's been widely reported LSU wants somebody with an offensive background. That's why Jimbo Fisher remains so sexy because LSU fans, they lived through the Les Miles era. They got a taste of it with Joe Brady. Now they want that all the time. And so if you're Lincoln Riley, think about it like this. You're already getting all the best offensive skill talent in high school football. Caleb Williams, number 1 high school quarterback in America, committed to you in 2021. The number 1 quarterback in 2023 is committed to Oklahoma. You think that guy's committed to Oklahoma because he likes the Applebee's in Norman? No. He's committed to Oklahoma because he wants to play for Lincoln Riley. You think he wouldn't go play for Lincoln Riley if Lincoln Riley was coaching at Oklahoma, LSU, Nebraska, Akron, Washington? He'd go play for Lincoln Riley wherever. And so Lincoln Riley's like, I can get quarterbacks anywhere. By the way, in the transfer portal era, I could get me a quarterback. I could get a quarterback tomorrow. If I leave, I'm going to have the first choice of quarterbacks. And, oh, by the way, I could even bring in Caleb Williams if I really wanted to. If I really wanted to get crazy, I could convince Caleb Williams to come wherever I go. On top of that, now you bring in the skill position talent that you're going to get at Oklahoma anyway, and you match it up with the defensive talent that you can recruit at LSU. Kind of feels like a no-brainer to me. So I'm not saying it's going to happen. I know Lincoln Riley denied it. But when I look at this LSU situation, I actually think it makes a little sense. If you're Lincoln Riley and you're going to the SEC anyway, and you know that you could be there as early as next year, and you know you don't have a roster to compete, why not reset your clock? Why not go to a place where you're going to recruit elite defensive talent, and you're going to still go get the best wide receivers in the country, the best quarterbacks in the country? It makes too much sense to me. Not saying it's going to happen, not saying it's 100% there, but what I am saying is that from my perspective, it does make a ton of sense. Quickly, I do want to talk about 3 other candidates at LSU because I think we're starting to get some clarification on who's interested and who's not. The first name, and I don't think he's interested because I told you probably 5 weeks ago that I didn't think he was going to get the job. It's our buddy Mel Tucker at Michigan State. And before we get into the who, what, when, where, why, I'm curious in one thing. Did you guys see what Colin Cowherd, my buddy from Fox Sports Radio, tweeted out about Mel Tucker on Saturday? I think it was Saturday morning. Because if you did, I hope you thought one thing. I hope you thought, what Colin just said reminds me an awful lot of what my buddy Aaron Torres said on the Aaron Torres podcast about 5 weeks ago. And that's not a criticism of Colin. He's doing his homework like everybody else. He has his own sources. But what I will tell you is this. When the LSU job opened up about 5 weeks ago, remember, Coach O gets fired, and immediately we kind of know who the candidates are. Jimbo Fisher, Lane Kiffin, on and on and on and on and on. And at the time, I think a little bit of a surprising candidate was Mel Tucker, the head coach at Michigan State. At the time, I think they were 6-0. I think they were 7-0. They're playing really good football. And when his name got linked to that job, he had obviously coached there under Nick Saban. He has SEC ties. I decided to reach out to 2 people that I really trust in the state of Michigan. And the one thing I'll say is, in my career and my job, the one thing you do is you build up sources, you build up contacts over a period of time, over the period of your career. And these guys in Michigan, these people in Michigan that I talk to, I trust them implicitly. They've never led me wrong. They've never been wrong. Anything to do with Michigan or Michigan State, men's basketball, football, I'm usually pretty on top of it. You can go back and listen to some of the stuff I was saying about Jim Harbaugh a year ago. I think I was ahead of the restructured contract and all that kind of stuff before a lot of people because, again, I'm fortunate enough to know smart people in Michigan that know what's going on. And so when Mel Tucker's name started getting linked to LSU, what did I tell you on this show? I said, I don't know if Mel Tucker is going to take the LSU job. If he does, I don't blame him because LSU's a better job than Michigan State. The last 3 coaches at LSU have won national championships, and the ceiling is undoubtedly higher at LSU than Michigan State. But what I did tell you was I said the bottom line is this. If Mel Tucker does leave Michigan State for LSU, it will not be over money. It will not be over dollars and cents. The one thing that my people in Michigan are telling me is this. Aaron, I don't know if he's leaving for LSU, but Michigan State will not be outbid for Mel Tucker. If it comes down to money, if it comes down to salary, if it comes down to assistant coaches pool, resources, facilities, whatever, Michigan State is willing to do whatever because 2 things. 1, Big Ten TV contract. People think of the SEC as this monolith, and it is. The biggest TV contract going right now is the Big Ten. Now, is that going to change when Oklahoma and Texas get to the SEC? I think that's the plan. But right now, the Big Ten has the biggest TV contract. That is how Purdue can afford to pay $5 million a year or whatever it is to Jeff Brom. How P.J. Fleck gets paid millions and millions of dollars at Minnesota. How Brett Bielema is getting a ton of money while they're still paying a buyout to Lovie Smith at Illinois. The Big Ten has money hand over fist, and money was never going to be an issue at Michigan State, especially with the fact that they also have as their primary booster Dan Gilbert, owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers, who is also a Michigan State alum. That brings me to Colin Cowherd's tweet on Saturday, which said the following. Let's see if I can pull it up here really quick. This is what Colin tweeted. I'm told Mel Tucker and Michigan State are close to a new deal. Negotiations are friendly and moving quickly. This isn't Colorado. Michigan State is all in on football. Contract offer is huge. Reminder, Dan Gilbert is a billionaire alum. He and Matt Ishba all in. And so I bring all that up to just say, sounds a lot like what we heard on the Aaron Torres podcast, right? And again, it's not a criticism to Colin. He's doing his homework. He's doing his own thing, whatever. But I told you this 5 weeks ago. I told you that maybe he leaves, but ultimately that it will not be over money. It will not be over dollars and cents. And financially, Michigan State will do whatever it takes to keep him. I would say on top of that, we are now at the point where everything that I've heard combined with the Colin Cowherd tweet, combined with a couple other things, I think it's now more likely that he stays at Michigan State than he leaves. First of all, again, not about the money. If LSU offers him $9 million a year, Michigan State will offer him $9.1 million. If LSU offers him $9.5 million, Michigan State will offer him $9.7 million. Does this end with Mel Tucker being the highest paid coach in college football? I don't know. But again, if LSU's first choice is Mel Tucker, he is going to have to choose LSU over something other than money. 2, what I would also say is, and I've heard this about a lot of candidates, I think the biggest single thing that is going for LSU is also something that is going to hurt them with some of these candidates, and that is that the positive of LSU is that the last 3 head coaches have won national championships there. Nick Saban, Les Miles, Ed Orgeron. The problem is 2 of those guys were fired, one of which was fired less than 2 years after he won a national championship. And so if you're Mel Tucker and you're going to make $8 million a year anyway, and you're going to be able to pay whatever you want for coordinators anyway, and your recruiting budget is through the roof, why not stay at Michigan State where you're appreciated, where you're happy, where you're accepted, as opposed to going to a place where they just fired a guy who won a national championship 2.5 years ago? I know I'm just saying. That is the buzz about this job. I do think it's a little bit different for Lincoln Riley, where at some point he's going to have to start competing in the SEC against other SEC teams. So if you're sitting there saying, why doesn't that apply to Lincoln Riley? It's because Lincoln Riley is eventually going to end up in the SEC. Mel Tucker already might have the second best team in the Big Ten right now, maybe the best team if they beat Ohio State this weekend. And so why leave that for a place that just fired a coach 20 months after winning a national championship? Finally, what I would also say, what I heard about Mel Tucker, we're headed toward a world where at some point it's going to be a 12-team playoff. The second best team in the Big Ten is getting into a 12-team playoff every year. So it's not like you even have to overcome Ohio State. And so I think that may play a role in Mel Tucker deciding to stay at Michigan State, at least for now as well. Now you start to have a few bad years. You lose a coordinator. You maybe whatever. I don't know. I can't even think of what could possibly happen. But that could all change. Or if you don't go to a 12-team playoff, do you reconsider if another great job opens up? But I'm just told that right now, I don't believe that Mel Tucker is really leaning towards LSU. The money is not going to be better than Michigan State. The path to the playoff is easier. Expectations are more realistic. And let me also add this. You also just never know what's going to happen in college football, right? I mean, James Franklin has one foot out the door at Penn State. Could Penn State be looking for a new coach soon if he somehow gets USC, which we're going to talk about in a minute? What about Ryan Day could go to the NFL at some point. Jim Harbaugh you already own. So I just don't think Mel Tucker is a realistic candidate. I would also say, by the way, I don't really think Jimbo Fisher's a realistic candidate. I don't know if you guys saw his press conference the other day where he was asked again. My buddy Olin Buchanan from Texags Radio asked him a great question. He said, "Could you say with 100% certainty that you are going to be the head coach of Texas A&M?" And what he basically said was he was basically like, look, you guys in the media all think us coaches are liars. Well, guess what? We as coaches think you and the media are liars. So that was funny. But then, two, what was also interesting about it was this. Jimbo Fisher gave an awesome answer. He goes, guys, I'm recruiting a class. We might have the number one class in the country coming in next year. He didn't say the kid's name specifically, but they just signed the number one player. They got a commitment from the number one player in the country, Walter Nolan, a defensive tackle from Tennessee. Can't say the kid's name. He's not signed. And he goes, so you mean to tell me I'm going to recruit all those great players to Texas A&M. Then I'm going to go across the division, stay in the division, have to play all those good players next year? You must be out of your mind. So I don't believe that Jimbo Fisher is really a candidate either. I think the ties to Scott Woodward, I think he's going to have to listen. I can't see him leaving LSU for a job. I can't see him leaving Texas A&M for a job within the division. I can't see it. Not right now, not in Jimbo Fisher's trajectory. He has everything he wants at A&M, a $9 million a year salary. Mike Elko is one of the highest paid coordinators in college football. They're having a ton of success. I know they just lost to Ole Miss. I don't believe that he's leaving. Finally, because somehow I went from 8 minutes on LSU to now 30 minutes on LSU, let me just wrap by quickly saying this. I do believe that when it comes to the LSU job, there is one name. I don't think he's first. I don't think he's second. I don't even know if he's fifth. But there is one name that you're not going to get a no from, and that's Billy Napier. And this is another one. If you listen to this podcast, I was ahead of it, and I'm not giving myself too much credit. What I am just saying is listen carefully, because more often than not, the stuff I say, it sounds crazy and ends up coming true. But what I told you about 3-4 weeks ago was I noticed something interesting with Billy Napier. For people who don't know Billy Napier, he is the head coach at Louisiana Lafayette. Don't call it Louisiana Lafayette. The Raging Cajuns, they're just the University of Louisiana. That's what they prefer to go by. And this guy is steamrolling group of 5 teams right now, okay? So 2 years ago, he goes 11-3. Last year, he goes 9-1 in a COVID-shortened season, 10-1 with a bowl win. And then he's 9-1 this year with the only loss opening week of Texas, meaning that he is on a 9-game win streak coming into this week. And what I told you about 3 or 4 weeks ago is this. I said Billy Napier is kind of an interesting guy. He's kind of quiet. He's cerebral. He's not kind of one of these guys that's out there, yay, rah, rah. I'm doing every media availability that I possibly can. He's kind of one of those old school football guys. Let's keep the main thing the main thing. Let's not do distractions. We don't do it here. And I had, frankly, never really heard Billy Napier do very many interviews outside of a media availability that was required as part of the job. Then I know, and I should say something else about Billy Napier too. He is also a guy that, whether directly or indirectly, he has made it pretty clear, I am not going for second-tier jobs, okay? I am happy at Louisiana. I would love to stay here. I am only going to a place where I can compete at the highest level for national championships every year. There were reports that South Carolina was interested. He pulled his name out last year. Reports 2 years ago when Mississippi State hired Mike Leach that they were interested. He said thanks, but no thanks. Auburn, I heard they were a little bit interested. He said thanks, but no thanks. And so when he started about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, whenever I started talking about it, I noticed all of a sudden this guy's doing a lot of interviews. And all of a sudden, he's doing a lot of interviews specifically with big Baton Rouge media personalities. And I told you, there's a great radio host in Baton Rouge named Jordy Culotta. I've been on his show a few times. I don't know him well. But all of a sudden, Billy Napier starts doing interviews on Baton Rouge radio. And I said, that's a little weird. That's a little interesting. And to me, what that struck me as was that Billy Napier was hearing all these names thrown out for LSU. He's hearing James Franklin. He's hearing Lane Kiffin. He's hearing Jimbo Fisher. He's hearing Dabo Swinney. Now he's hearing Lincoln Riley. And I think that was kind of his way to just let everybody know, you know what? Let's pump the brakes. Just want you guys to know. Don't forget about the guy down in Louisiana, Lafayette. Don't forget the guy down the road in Lafayette, because that guy's pretty good too. And I told you, I said, there's a reason everybody does that. I said it with Lincoln Riley. There's a reason Lincoln Riley's name is out there. There's a reason Billy Napier's name is out there and why Billy Napier's all of a sudden starting to do all these interviews. It's because he got tired of seeing everybody else's name tired of seeing everybody else's name with linked to these jobs. And so he said, screw it, I'm going to start doing interviews. And so why do I bring it up? It's because about 2 or 3 days ago, same radio host, Jordy Culotta, goes on his radio show. This is on YouTube, so this is no private information. It's all available to the public. It was obviously said on radio, and it was said on YouTube on Jordy Culotta's show. Jordy Culotta said that Billy Napier, and I'm not saying that he heard this from Billy Napier. I'm just saying that Billy Napier has let the administration know at LSU there is no job that is going to open up that he will accept until he knows what LSU is doing. Doesn't mean he's getting LSU. Doesn't mean he's their first choice. Doesn't mean if a really good job, if Florida somehow opens up, if whatever, that he wouldn't necessarily take it. But essentially, what he kind of said was like, look, I ain't taking anything other than LSU until I know that you guys aren't interested. And so I think that's an important place for LSU to be. I still believe they're vetting all sorts of candidates. I still believe Lincoln Riley could be in the mix. I still believe, heck, I'll take it a step further. I still believe that it's at least possible there are candidates that we still haven't heard about that could be interested in this job. But it's good for LSU to know very simply, if we want this guy is available. So what I would say to wrap on LSU, because I don't know how I went so long, Lincoln Riley I think is a factor. I think Mel Tucker's out. I think Jimbo Fisher's out. I think Billy Napier is in. So what I want to do, take a quick break, come back, promise to be faster on the USC, Florida, and Virginia Tech coaching searches, and we'll do some other stuff, but let's take a quick break. We'll be right back.